A privilege and a responsibility to address an issue that sits at the intersection of economic progress, social progress, and gender justice. The issue being the imperative to increase the participation of women in the BPO sector in Bangladesh. I sincerely hope that I may be able to discharge this responsibility effectively and set the tone for the discussion that will follow. As you're all aware by now, the BPO sector is rapidly expanding, creating jobs, attracting foreign investment, and expanding our global digital footprint. But there's a critical imbalance in this progress, and that is women are still significantly underrepresented in this field, for that matter in most fields in Bangladesh. According to the member company's data of BACO, the participation of women in BPO and the ITS sector is 27%, as you can see in the slide up there. The ICT division estimates 650,000 freelancers nationwide, of which only 9% are women. This means that roughly 58,500 female freelancers versus about 591,000 male freelancers. So the gap is huge, as you can see. So despite having the skills, despite having the ambition, the resilience, far too many women have been sidelined in this sector. And this has been done by structural barriers, by cultural barriers, by legal barriers, and of course, outdated work practices. Make no mistake that this is not just a missed opportunity for women. It is not like we're crying out for more participation just for our sake. This is really a missed opportunity for the entire nation. And that is what we need to emphasize in every possible platform. People need to get that very, very clearly, that this is a missed opportunity not just for women. I repeat, it is a missed opportunity for the entire nation if we fail to increase the participation of women in the BPO sector. And why is that? Because when women fully participate in the workforce, productivity increases, 1, families prosper, 2, societies become more and more equitable. The BPO sector, with its flexibility, remote potential, and rapid growth, I believe is very uniquely positioned to be a leader in gender inclusion. Today, we are here, hopefully, to talk about solutions and not just dwell on the problem. We're going to talk about legal reforms that can actually protect women's rights, policies that can truly include women, and of course, cultural shifts, the most important and the hardest to achieve, that will finally empower women in the true sense of the word. So this discussion today is not just going to be about fairness. It is going to be about unleashing the full potential of Bangladesh. Because as we all know, when women rise, industries thrive, economies grow, and societies evolve. So we all stand to benefit from high participation of women in the BPO sector, or for that matter, any other sector. So before I proceed further to talk about some of the barriers that stand in the way of women's participation in the sector, and then some of the solutions, I would like to address the elephant in the room. Perhaps it's only in my mind, but some of you may be wondering, what is a lawyer doing giving a keynote at a BPO conference. It's a legitimate question. I'm a lawyer, I don't work in this sector, so what am I doing here? Well, the truth is, I asked Saima that very question when she invited me to deliver the keynote speech. But later, I changed my mind, and the reason is that I may not really manage a call center or know how to do that. I don't know how to design back-end systems, but I work every day at the intersection of rights and reality. And when women in any sector are denied equity, whether through legal and policy gaps or through unsafe work environments or cultural stigma for that matter, it becomes everyone's responsibility, including mine, to speak up and push for change. And that is what brings me here today. With that, if I may have the next slide, please. What is really standing in the way of gender balance in this sector? What are the barriers that we are speaking of? See, in the bustling offices in Bangladesh's BPO sector, thousands of young women bring intelligence, ambition, resilience every single day to work. But more often than not, they're navigating a system that was not built for them or with them in mind. They're navigating a system that was built for men. Understandably, you cannot be expected to thrive in a system that is not built for you. A system that still expects a woman to prove twice as much, even though they will be paid half as much. The barriers, broadly speaking, may be divided into three categories: legal barriers, policy barriers, and of course, cultural barriers, the hardest to fight, the most difficult to fight. So with that, I'd like to touch on some of the legal barriers that are there. If I may have the slide on legal barriers, please. Bangladesh does not have a specific law for men or for that matter women in the BPO sector. So there's no specific legal framework to protect workers' rights in the BPO sector. The Bangladesh Labour Act 2006, as amended till date, this does afford some basic protections for men and women, and they apply to the BPO sector workers as well. Provided, there's a catch, provided these workers fall within the definition of worker as defined in the Labour Act. So the Labour Act, just to explain, does apply, does afford protection to workers who fall within the definition of workers in the Labour Act. And those who do not fall within that definition, they are not afforded any protection by any act or any law. Their rights completely arise out of the contract of employment that they have with their employer. And more often than not, the reality is that these employers enjoy a much more powerful bargaining position than the employee. So they make sure that the protections afforded to the employee are bare minimum. So this is a gap that we need to address through legislation. The definition of worker in the Labour Act, and I don't want to get too technical, but this is critical for everyone to understand, because a lot of employees usually come up to me and say whether they are afforded the protections under the Labour Act. The definition of worker specifically excludes people employed in an administrative capacity, people who are managers or supervisors. So for managers, supervisors and those employed in the BPO sector in an administrative capacity, you're not afforded any protection by the labour law of Bangladesh. Your protection is entirely dependent on the contract that you negotiate with your employers. So this is where we need to legislate, because you cannot rely on the goodwill or good faith of the employer all the time. Some of the protections that are there in the Labour Act, which are applicable to those female workers in the BPO sector who fall within the definition of worker include maternity leave and benefits, to elaborate 16 weeks of paid maternity leave, 8 weeks before and 8 weeks after childbirth. That is mandated in the Labour Act. Then of course, there are conditions attached to this. You must have worked in that particular company for at least 6 months for you to avail of this benefit. Also, there's another condition. You cannot have more than 2 surviving children. If you do, then these protections don't apply if you are pregnant for a 3rd time. And of course, there is another protection in the Labour Act that says that you cannot be deprived of maternity benefits during pregnancy. So even if you're terminated during pregnancy, the employer has to pay you maternity benefits as per the particular act. And then of course there are provisions to ensure enforcement, in the sense, if a particular employer violates the maternity benefit provisions, then fines can be imposed, fines up to 25,000 taka, which is not much, come to think of it. Another protection that is afforded in the Labour Act is equal pay for equal work. In other words, non-discrimination in wages is also there in the Labour Act. But again, the Labour Act does not apply to managers. The Labour Act does not apply to supervisors or those employed in a supervisory capacity or administrative capacity. There is of course a prohibition on night work in the Labour Act, which says that women cannot be required to work between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. without their consent. So if they consent to do night shifts, then it's a different story. If they do not consent, you cannot impose an obligation on them. You cannot force them to do this.